From 2022 to 2023, Miriam S. Udine served as an assistant district attorney with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. Prior, Attorney General William Barnes appointed Miriam to begin hearing cases as a United States immigration judge in April 2019. So without further ado, Sister Miriam.
Good morning. Dear Governor Abbott, I stand before you today as the legal director for the Muslim Legal Fund of America, representing the Council on American Islamic Relations in federal court against actions you have taken that violate the United States Constitution. But I am also here to speak plainly about what you are doing to Muslim Americans in Texas and why it must stop. Let me be clear about the legal infirmities of your November 18th proclamation, designating CAIR as a foreign terrorist organization. And let me also be clear that we know that you know about these infirmities, yet you made the proclamation anyway. First, you lack the authority, and you know you do as a former Attorney General for the state of Texas, because you know that under federal law, only the U.S. Secretary of State may designate foreign terrorist organizations under 8 U.S.C. Section 1189. This is not a power states possess. The Constitution's Supremacy Clause preempts state attempts to conduct foreign policy through sanctions and designations. Your proclamation is void from its inception. Second, CAIR does not meet the statutory definition, and you know it does not, as a former justice of the Texas Supreme Court, because you know that to be designated as an FTO, an entity must be 1, foreign, 2, engage in terrorist activity, and 3, threaten U.S. national security. CAIR is a domestic organization, operates exclusively within the United States, engages in civil rights advocacy protected by the First Amendment, and poses no threat to anyone, except those who would strip Muslims of their constitutional rights. Third, you provided no due process, and you know that as a former state court trial judge. You did not do so. The 14th Amendment guarantees that no state shall deprive any person of property without due process of law. CAIR received no notice, no hearing, no opportunity to respond before you issued a proclamation stripping it of property rights. Fourth, this is unconstitutional retaliation, and you know that it is. Fun fact, CAIR has sued you successfully 3 times for First Amendment violations, and it has succeeded every single time. Your proclamation explicitly cites CAIR's protected political speech, advocacy for Palestinian rights, calls for Muslim civic engagement, criticism of Israeli government policies as evidence of wrongdoing. Punishing an organization because you disagree with its speech is precisely what the First Amendment forbids. Your proclamation relies on discredited innuendo, guilt by association, and statements taken out of context. Governor Abbott, yesterday you posted on social media about Marwan Maroof, my beloved friend and client, calling him a Dallas Muslim leader with Hamas ties, and citing his imminent deportation as proof of CAIR's quote-unquote support for Hamas and terror. Let me dissect the profound fallacy of this statement. Marwan is not a Hamas operative. He is a husband, a father of 4 U.S. citizen children, a man who has lived in this country for decades, worked hard, paid taxes, and contributed to his community. The government's case against him rests on a $65 donation made over 25 years ago to a charitable organization that at the time was perfectly legal. That organization was later prosecuted in the Holy Land Foundation case, a case so riddled with prosecutorial overreach that innocent men remain imprisoned to this day with no path to vindication. You suggest that because a CAIR executive director called Marwan a pillar of the community, this somehow proves CAIR supports terrorism. Let me be clear. Describing a community member in positive terms is not material support for terrorism. It is human decency. By your logic, anyone who has ever spoken kindly of anyone, later accused of any wrongdoing, is complicit in that wrongdoing. This is McCarthyism. This is guilt by association. This is fundamentally un-American. You invoke Hamas, an organization designated by the US government, and then smear an American Muslim by proximity, by heritage, by the flimsiest of connections. You know that CAIR has condemned Hamas attacks. You know that CAIR has spent 31 years fighting terrorism and bigotry. You know that the terrorism boogeyman you invoke is nothing more than a tired formulaic playbook to stoke fear of Muslims. But here is what's different about Muslims today. We understand that you are making it impossible to be Muslim and civically engaged in Texas, and we understand why you are doing so. Governor Abbott, you have built your political career on certain proclaimed values. Let me remind you of them. You claim to defend religious freedom. You invoke it constantly when discussing Christian business owners, Christian prayer in schools, Christian displays on public property. Yet you investigate Muslim mediation panels, voluntary religious arbitration no different from Jewish bet-din courts or Christian dispute resolution, and call them Sharia courts that threaten Western civilization. You signed a law banning Sharia compounds while ignoring countless church-sponsored communities across Texas. Religious freedom, apparently, is only for some religions. You claim to champion property rights. You have positioned yourself as the ultimate defender of Texans' right to own land, free from government interference. Yet your proclamation strips CAIR of the right to own property in Texas without due process. Property rights, apparently, do not extend to Muslims. You claim to oppose government overreach. You rail against federal intrusion into Texas affairs. You have threatened to defy federal agencies. You invoke states' rights and limited government at every opportunity. Yet you have wielded state power to designate a domestic civil rights organization as a terrorist entity, a power you do not possess. Limited government, apparently, does not limit your authority to persecute those you dislike. You claim to defend families. You speak movingly about the sanctity of family, the importance of keeping children with their parents, the bedrock role of family in Texas values. Yet you celebrate the deportation of Marwan, a father of 4, separated from his family because of a charitable donation made a quarter-century ago. Family values, apparently, are only for families who look like yours. Your proclamation against CAIR does not exist in isolation. It is part of a coordinated assault on Muslim Americans across Texas. And now, President Trump has announced plans to officially designate the Muslim Brotherhood and, by extension, organizations like CAIR as terrorist entities. You are coordinating with a federal administration that has made clear its intent to expel, silence, and criminalize Muslim civic participation. This is not governance, this is erasure. Governor Abbott, you rely on a boogeyman to justify your actions. The terrorism boogeyman, the Sharia boogeyman, the foreign infiltration boogeyman. But CAIR will not be silenced. Islam and Muslim Americans will not be erased, and we will see you in court.
Thank you, Sister Mary.